Okay, now that Holly has her gum chewed up, we can get this podcast going.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome everyone. This is episode number 26 of the Nutrient Health Project podcast. Like I just said, my wife Holly Danielle is back in the studio, as it were, or living room, as it doubles, for the first time since September 5th. So, I, as always, am your fearless host and also co-host. Andrew Frisch. This is my wife, Holly Danielle Frisch.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. We are Nutrient Health and Fitness, and again, this is the Nutrient Health and Fitness Project podcast. So today, like I said, we're going to do episode number 26. We are going to be talking about kind of setting your calories and macros for weight loss goals, for muscle gain goals. I want to do this because this is probably, and we'll talk more about this, but this is a question that we get a lot. So I wanted to kind of just record a podcast to show people kind of from like start to finish, well, start to progress, I should say, how to set your macros, because this is very context specific. Someone will say like, hey, how much should I be eating? And it's like, I have no idea what you've been doing. Like, this is a conversation that's going to be like a little while. It's not just a simple numbers game. So, but before we get into all of the details, really quick, we don't run any ads on the podcast anymore. If you've noticed, we haven't done that for I don't know how many episodes. So we don't run ads on the podcast anymore. I almost didn't get that sentence out. We don't try to sell you anything. And we don't try to get you to sign up for anything. Basically, I wanted to start doing that to save your ears and to respect your time. So everything on this podcast is strictly information and entertainment, and we just do this because this is kind of like our life mission, is to help other people, lose large amounts of weight like Holly did, overcome depression and anxiety, and potentially even addiction like I did. So it's all education and entertainment. If anything in this podcast is useful to you or someone you can help us you can return the favor, reciprocate in a number of ways. You can tell someone else about it. You can subscribe if you're not already. Leave us a 5-star review. Connect with us on social media. And lastly, you can email your questions to nutrientpodcast@gmail.com. So the opening out of the way, let's get rolling. Holly, take it away.
So, in today's episode, we'll understand how to set up your calories and macros. We'll explain why it's helpful to track and the best app to use.
And we will even go into some considerations for if and when things slow down for you, which they likely will, like why eat less and move more is not a long-term solution. So we're going to cover kind of base, like how do you set your numbers? Where do you get those numbers from? Should you do something before you set those numbers? And then as you're progressing, what do you need to take into account? Statistically speaking, 95% of people who lose large amounts of weight will put that weight back on within 5 years. And I want to put a little kind of asterisk to that. I've always wondered if that's an accurate statistic. So I did a little Google foo before we recorded this, and I found anywhere from like 80 up to 95% of people put the weight back on. So still, we're basically, the goal with this podcast is to help you be in that top 5 to 20%. But statistics don't matter. I think it's really more about just kind of keeping the weight off. So let's officially get this thing rolling. Episode number 26, setting your calories and macros.
So, the most common question we get is, how much should I eat to lose weight?
Yep. And we also get, it's not as common, but I think it's equally important. And I do also get people asking, like, how much should I eat to gain muscle? So this is not solved by eat less and move more, right? Which I think is what most kind of Western doctors, Western medicine is going to tell you, like, well, just eat less and move more. And this is something that if you're following me specifically on Facebook, you will see me kind of occasionally rant and get pissed off about this and post about it, because there are a lot of accounts on Instagram especially where people just say, like, you just have to eat less and move more. And if that were true, I think everyone would be healthy, and this whole weight loss, it wouldn't be $1 billion weight loss industry, right? So there's obviously more to the puzzle than just eat less and move more. I think people like to simplify things and blame it on calories. I know there are some really big names in the fitness space that will say, if you're not if you're not losing weight, you're not eating as little as you expect, right? They'll actually say like, well, you're not tracking your food properly, or XYZ. They'll give you a bunch of different reasons. And with the consulting work I do, I talk to people that are eating 800, 900 calories a day and are not losing weight. So I would beg to differ, and that's a lot of what we want to talk about today. So yeah.
And this is also not solved by eating 80 to 90% of what's in the grocery store.
Correct. So, kind of what she means by that is you do have to kind of pay attention to the foods you eat, the quality of food, but that's also going to be kind of dependent on the level of your goals. So we'll talk more about that. You don't have to be perfect. That's the main thing to take away. But like the level of your food quality will likely have a measurable impact on your results. I think that's fair to say, right? This is another thing on social media. People talk about a calorie is a calorie, and I think that is complete hogwash. I don't get to say that word very often, but it's a fun word to say. But if a calorie were a calorie, and this is like people have done the Twinkie diet, right? There was like a professor, I think, I don't remember where he was at, but he showed that like literally just eating Twinkies, he lost weight. If anybody remembers the movie Super Size Me, where Morgan, I can't remember his last name, but somebody listening to this might remember it, but he basically ate like a bunch of McDonald's. You can lose weight if you're eating fewer calories of those foods. But losing weight doesn't mean losing fat. Losing weight could mean you're losing muscle. And if you're losing muscle with the fat that you're losing, you're setting yourself up for a host of health issues down the road. So I definitely want to talk about food quality, and I feel like you're trying to say something to keep talking.
No, you're good. I was just talking about the whole, I'm sure everyone's seen the if it fits your macros. Mm-hmm. A lot of people follow that, and if that's how you want to do it, that's fine. I just don't think it's the best way to do it.
And again, like that will depend on some people, right? So if it fits your macros, we've talked about it briefly in the podcast, but if anybody's new and they're not familiar, if it fits your macros is basically a dietary style where you determine what your calories and macros are, and then like food quality isn't really an important aspect of it. It's like, oh, I have carbs left, so well, you could have potato, which is a carb, you could have a Pop-Tart, which is a carb, right? And there are people that kind of like glorify eating ice cream and Pop-Tarts and all that, and that is going to work for someone in some cases, and we'll talk about those cases, but then just like blindly eating foods that fit those macros, that's not going to work for other people. So again, it's going to be really kind of based on a number of factors that we'll dive more into detail here in a moment. So we basically have, I think there are 6 different steps and considerations that we're going to talk about today. And Holly, take it off. Number 1.
So number 1 is just track your calories, your macros. And why is this important?
So that is number 1, right? That is the very first thing to do. Anytime somebody comes to us and, it's a new client, I don't give them any numbers. A number of people want like, well, how much should I eat? What should I do? And I just track what you're doing right now. I just want to see, what your diet looks like as of today. It's important because for a number of reasons. It helps you find your baseline, right? Which when you find your baseline, that helps us or you kind of know where to go. And tracking helps me determine your food quality. So like if someone reaches out to me, and this happens fairly frequently. Hey, how much should I eat? Well, how much are you eating now? I have no idea. That's the first step. Understand what are you eating right now, because if you find one of these calorie calculators that we're going to offer you here in a little bit, and it says, just for simplicity's sake, you should be eating 2,000 calories a day, and you start tracking your food and you're eating, let's say, 3,500 calories a day. Well, guess what? You don't have to drop to 2,000. You could just drop to 3,000, and you'd likely potentially lose weight at that high number. On the flip side of it, if you're supposed to be eating 2,000 calories and you start tracking your food and you're like, well, shit, I'm only getting 1,200 calories, which is kind of more common on what I see, you're not going to want to jump necessarily from 12 up to 2,000, right? So tracking, first and foremost, that it just helps establish a baseline, helps you understand where are you at right now. And I think that's, again, like critically important. So, and again, like determining food quality, these are things that we will talk a little bit about throughout the episode and why that's important as well.
Tracking will also help you identify possible causes of inflammation.
Yep. So, which kind of goes back to the food quality, but it could also even like think of food tracking as like another term for it would be like a food diary, right? So, if you notice that at 2 p.m. your stomach is all torn up and you're super sleepy and you can't think straight, you can look back at like, what did you have at noon? What did you have for lunch? And if you start to see patterns of like, man, every day when I have whatever,
Dairy.
that perfect example.
Yeah.
If I have yogurt or dairy or something for lunch rather, and 2 hours later my stomach's torn up and I can't think straight and blah blah blah. Well, now because you're tracking, you know that like maybe I should cut that out and just try going without it for a week or two and see if that clears up the stomach issue. So it does help you identify possible causes of inflammation. And that's, again, if someone comes to us and asks us, what should I be eating? And this doesn't happen as often, but if someone's like, hey, I've been tracking for a couple months, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, oh, cool. I guess I can look through and see like what might be causing problems. So It's a great way to identify possible causes of inflammation. And that is important, not just because of pain, but because one of the most important things you can do if you're wanting to lose weight and it's not going like you think it is, one of the most important things you need to do is look at how much inflammation you possibly have going on in your body, because you need to get that inflammation down if you want to have like your body working the way it should and help you ideally like losing the weight that you're trying to lose.
Right.
So track.
And then step number 2 is you want to determine what the calories should be.
Right. Should, and like should in quotations, because what the calories should be is kind of like what the science says it should be. Like there are a number of different options when it comes to figuring out the calories, and all of them are, I've talked before about this, like I view myself and what we do as like not just nutrition coaches. Like I view us as nutritional detectives. I view us as like nutritional philosophers. I view us as someone, as a company, as a group. We help people understand the science, but then like with a lot of things, there's an art to it as well. So there are theories and concepts behind all of it. So when I say should be, that's just what an algorithm tells you. Again, if you're eating 2,000 calories because that's what it told you should be eating, and you're way drastically underneath of that, then there's going to be kind of a transition period before you can worry about eating those 2,000 calories. As far as how to determine what the calories should be, you have a lot of options. Obviously, like we have a spreadsheet. Every client that comes to us, there's a number of different like forms and spreadsheets that I keep track of for everybody. The problem with ours, as awesome I think as it is, and as proud of it as I am, and as much work as I've put into the spreadsheets, unfortunately, it's not available online. I don't know how to do that. If I could figure out how to put it up online, I would do that, and I might look into figuring that out. But if you're not working with us, if you're not closely, if you don't have access to me with a phone number or something like that, then your other options would be online, obviously on the interwebs. If you just search in like calorie calculator, you're going to get a ton of different options. Lots of stuff out there. I would specifically recommend the one that I've sent to people that I think is very detailed, and when you go to the page, there are a ton of options, specifically Legion calculators. So if you Google Legion calculators, you'll be pulled to a page, to a website, and if anybody just can't be bothered to Google, the website is actually legionathletics.com/tools/macronutrient-calculator, and that'll pull you up to kind of the page with all of their tools. So again, legionathletics.com/tools/macronutrient-calculator. That should pull you up, or if you just search again, Legion calculators. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. I do like them as a brand for some of the things. Like they seem to be one of the supplement brands that put a little bit of thought into their stuff. But if you go to that page, Legion calculators, then you're going to see a ton of different stuff. They have like ways to calculate what you should be able to lift, and just on and on and on. The ones that you're going to be kind of best served with are the TDEE calculator, the BMR calculator. They have a macro calculator, a calorie calculator. They even have a weight loss calculator. So just getting on there and kind of playing around, you can determine, what you should be setting, right? Like what's your BMR, what's your total daily energy expenditure, where do you want to be macros, calories, weight loss, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Most any food tracking app will also help you set that up. We use Chronometer, and it's by far the best we've, I think, ever come across.
Yeah, 100%. I used to be really big on my MyFitnessPal before knowing about Chronometer, and then I learned about that through another one of the people through the nutrition space. I think he's a PhD nutrition scientist. But Chronometer, I can't speak. It's been so long since I've used MyFitnessPal. I don't remember how detailed they get. But with Chronometer, you'll go in and kind of like punch in and first off, with Chronometer, there's a free version, there's a paid version. Anybody that works with us as a client, you get put on as a client on Chronometer, and you automatically get like the gold version of Chronometer with all the bells and whistles, like for no extra payment. But when you sign up with Chronometer, you will enter in all of your stats. Your heights, like you have multiple heights, your height, your weight, how active you are, your goals. Do you want to lose, like how much weight do you want to lose and how long of a time period? So Chronometer, I think, is really the most fully faceted one out there. The amount of information on Chronometer can definitely kind of get overwhelming for some people. But if you don't have to dive into all of that detail, right? You can just kind of get on there, set up your profile, and maybe that's a whole other episode that I'll make on Chronometer. I will say, if you're interested in using Chronometer, if you get on YouTube, and you can go to our channel, which is just get on YouTube, search Andy Frisch, and it'll be on there, or you can just search Chronometer. So like specifically these words. This is the title of a video I created. Chronometer setup for weight loss, nutrient health and fitness. If you find that on YouTube, what that is basically a short little video I recorded after a seminar I did at one of the local gyms, and it helps you kind of go through Chronometer, how to get your profile set up and how to set your calories up for weight loss. So it's not super in depth, but it does help you kind of get the basics going. Right. So those options, again, guys, like we've got the calculators online. There's a ton of them. You got Legion calculators, and then pretty much any food tracking app. Although Chronometer is the king of tracking apps when it comes to that stuff. So
step number 3, you're going to determine what your macros should be.
Yep. So macros, just in case anybody is, again, new to this podcast, macronutrients. What are the 3 macronutrients, Holly Danielle?
Carbs, proteins, and fats.
Carbs, proteins, and fats. I don't know if you could hear because she's a little quiet sometimes. But no, I'm just teasing. So we're going to start with protein. Protein is like essentially the centerpiece to like every meal if you can. But it should be like the centerpiece of your diet because your body has to have protein intake and it has to have fat intake. You can live without carbohydrate intake. This is something that people still to this day somehow argue about on the internet. You can live without carbs and glucose coming in because your body can process protein and fats and turn that into the glucose that it needs. But protein is the centerpiece. So, and your protein, like if you say, how much protein should I have? Ideally, everybody always just kind of in the fitness space says 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Well, what if you're a 240 pound individual trying to lose 100 pounds? Does that mean you need to eat 240 grams of protein? No, I would say no, that's not necessarily what you need to do. What I do is kind of a rough rule is for protein, like anywhere from 0.8 grams to like all the way up to like 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. And really you could even do less than the 0.8. If you can find out what your fat-free mass is, then you could do like 1 gram per pound of fat-free mass. So say that, like 240 pound individual who's trying to lose weight has a body fat percentage of 40%. So, math really quick, that's going to be 48, 96, 96 minus that. So that's going to be like 140-ish pounds. I'm checking my math on that. But like, so you would try to get like 140 to 150 grams of protein. That range is, all the way up to like a gram and a half. Some people even do like 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I think that's overkill. But protein is a very satiating nutrient to eat. So it helps you stay full. But also, protein is everything you eat, your body has to expend energy to break down and to digest. So protein is a very energy intensive macronutrient for your body to break down. So what that means is, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, but what that means is like for every 100 grams of calories, or for every 100 calories of protein that you eat, your body's going to burn about 25 to 30 of those calories just trying to digest it, right? And that's not the same case with protein, with carbs and fats. So look at protein as that centerpiece, and the higher, as long as you don't have a pre-existing kidney issue, the higher you can go with that, it'll help kind of take some of those calories from carbs and fats, which, again, context is king, but a lot of times that can make a big difference. So that's kind of what I would say as far as protein.
Right. And so, like you said, carbs and fats will be context specific.
Yep. So let's kind of break this down. So carbs and fats.
What's the case for carbs?
Sorry, we're still a little rusty on the podcast, guys. We're getting back into the smooth flow of things. So the case for carbohydrates would be like just some few things to consider. So let me step back. Carbs and fats, like you said, context specific. So there are studies that show if people do a high carb and low fat diet, they lose weight and things work really well. There are some studies that show if people do a high fat and low carb diet, things go really well. People lose weight, everybody's happy. There are some studies that show if people eat a balance, like a 33% of protein, carbs, and fats, they lose weight and they do really well. So clearly there's not a magic percentage that everybody should be eating. But if you understand some of these things that could be applied to the context of should I do carbs or fats, you can empower yourself. So a few of the things to kind of take into account for like the case for carbs, if it were. So you've got your protein set and you're like, should I set carbs higher or fats higher? Because it's kind of a give and take, right? If you have really good insulin sensitivity, so if you have healthy levels of insulin, then you could probably have more carbohydrates. That's actually going to be a good thing. So if you're doing a lot of resistance training or just really intense activity, it doesn't even have to be workouts, right? Let's say you're overweight, but you're working like a construction job or something, and you're I'm trying to think of other intense jobs, but if you're someone, lawyer, mentally, like people don't always realize, but if you think you're burning calories, if you're someone who just has a lot of responsibility and your job is very stressful and you're not sedentary behind a desk all day long, then you might have a case for carbohydrates. On that same note, if you're high stress, right? So if you're healthy insulin levels, if you're resistance training, if you're very active, if you have a high stress job, what are a couple other causes?
If you're having trouble sleeping or relaxing, having some carbs before bed will definitely help you sleep. Helps me sleep, I know.
Amen. Why is that?
Helps relax you.
Yeah. So carbohydrates are kind of like counter-regulatory to cortisol and to the hormones that make you be more alert, that kind of get you going. Carbohydrates will obviously get broken down into glucose, which will cause insulin to spike, and insulin will then kind of like will decrease cortisol and some of those excitatory things. So what else?
Also, if you're a carbophobe.
Yep. So I think, go ahead.
I know I have been before and I've gotten better at it, and I know Andy has.
She still is.
I've gotten better.
You have gotten better, but
we've also got a lot of clients that are severe carbophobes.
Yeah, well, so. And I blame the fitness industry because we kind of do this pendular. I think that's the word, pendulum, but like pendular swing back and forth. To like, oh, you've got to go low fat, high carb. Oh, you got to go low carb. And right now we're still kind of in the haze of a low carb, phenomenon. And again, there's benefits to doing low carb. She and I both had blood work back in July. This is November 14th as we're recording this, 2022. So 3-4, huh?
No, November 14th, yeah.
Yeah. So 3-4 months ago, whatever it was, we did blood work, and our insulin sensitivity was ridiculously good. So that's basically a sign of we needed more carbohydrates, because they're actually, if you have really good levels of insulin sensitivity and you're still staying super low carb, that can be detrimental to your health. I don't think a lot of people understand that. So if you're not getting a lot of what would be referred to as insulin signaling, so your body seeing carbohydrates come in and spiking that blood sugar, if you're not getting a lot of that, that can have negative impacts on your thyroid. It can have negative impacts on something in your body called glutathione, which is a master antioxidant, which is, again, going back to the inflammation thing. Glutathione is super important for reducing inflammation. So if you're low carb, that can actually negatively impact your body's endogenous production of glutathione. So, and it can be tough. I've been doing this, over a decade, and I know the benefit of carbohydrates. I know how good I feel when I have them, and it's still sometimes you get I hit 200 grams yesterday. I might not want to get that high today, and it's that's really, if you meet those previous conditions, it's 200 grams really isn't that much. Again, context specific. So, but the biggest thing with carbohydrates is it's generally the widest ranging of all of these possibilities. So, like I said, there are people that do succeed with something being carb levels being super low or super high or kind of anywhere in between. You could even do something like carb cycling, where you do, say, low carb for 5 days of the week, and then 2 days of the week you go higher, or you do low carb for 2 weeks and then you give yourself a high carb refeed meal. Again, there are a number of ways to do this, and it's all context specific. But just to give you kind of where can you go from here, where do you fit on those previous things? We're going to dive into fats in 2 seconds, but I think of a lot of this in terms of, oddly enough, this is going to be a weird jump, but Wayne Gretzky. I am not a big hockey fan, but Wayne Gretzky was, from what I understand, the Michael Jordan of hockey. And he had a really good saying that, people asked him how he was so good, and his answer was essentially, I'm sure I've mentioned this in the podcast before, but his answer was I don't play where the puck is at. I try to go to where the puck is going to be and kind of predict it. So I think that applies to your diet. You're trying to do the same thing, but instead of the puck, it's your body. So you're trying to kind of understand, where's my body going to be? So if you say you do, if someone comes to us and they have, moderate insulin resistance, so the exact opposite of insulin sensitivity, right? They've been having way too many carbs. The first thing I'm probably going to do after they track for a week or two, so I see what they're doing, the first thing I'm going to do is likely put them on a low carb diet for 2 to 3 months. And we'll see how that goes for them. But I'm going to let them know, hey, this isn't a for the rest of your life thing. We're going to be trying to tell your body, we don't have a lot of carbs to improve your insulin levels. And then at a certain point, we'll either start increasing carbohydrates all the way across the board, or maybe we'll start doing, like I said, some of those refeed meals. But the idea is just trying to predict where the body's going with what we're doing right now, so that we know when we're going to switch to the next season of their journey in the weight loss or the weight muscle gain. We're going to know where we're going. So that's kind of what I would say with carbs.
Another thing of again, reiterating that context is king, is where I feel you can manipulate based on how your body feels, whether you need higher carbs that day or higher fats that day. And for me, I feel I notice I can do a high fat day every once in a while, but me not having my gallbladder, my body does way better with carbs,
right,
and lower fats.
Well, and context being king, I think us learning things too. So I used to always think, well, if you don't have your gallbladder, then we need to make sure you keep your fats low. But as we've learned, there are some people that have their gallbladder taken out, and the body actually adapts to not having the gallbladder. Right. I think that more likely with you, it's potentially a gut dysbiosis thing,
It could
right?
be too.
And
yeah.
that's a podcast for another day. But gut dysbiosis is basically like an imbalance of gut bacteria, like good bacteria to bad bacteria going on. And if that's the case, then that's going to impact what you can digest. So
Right.
obviously, these things can get way more complicated, and we'll keep it surface level. But that does bring up a really good point, and I think I I think I do well with carbs or fats because I push myself to the absolute extreme.
Right.
I mean, maybe not the absolute extreme. I feel like I could always do more. I kind of want to do the Goggins 4x4x48 program. But if anybody's listening, there's a guy named David Goggins. He's super hardcore. And he has the thing 4x4x48. It's like you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I don't think she would let me do that, but it definitely piques my curiosity. But anyways, I do a lot of different kind of, I guess, extreme behaviors. I like fasting. I like doing cold showers. I like trying to do low carb and low fat and just kind of being all over the place. So I'm trying to make my body more flexible with what it does. But again, one of the first things I said in this episode was like the level of effort, right? Your excuse me, essentially what, like, I'm not saying that everybody listening to this needs to fast and needs to do cold showers and needs to do all this. I want to really see what I'm capable of in this life. And some of them are like horrendous, like, oh God, that was a bad mistake. But other times it's like, wow, that really is paying off and that's beneficial. And I want to be able to like be flexible with what I eat. So that's a major tangent. But so anyways, let's protein, carbs, got those done. What's next?
All right, the case for fats.
The case for fats. So some of these are going to be the kind of exact opposite. So the case for carbs would be if you're really insulin sensitive. Well, the case for fats, like I said, if someone comes to us, would be if you have really not healthy insulin levels, right? If your doctor is like, well, you might have some insulin resistance going on, you might want to lower those carbs and replace them with fats. So if you don't have good insulin levels, if you're not doing like very much intense training, and intense is a relative term, so it doesn't mean you need to be like, well, I'm not squatting as much as the other person. If what you're squatting feels like an 8 out of 10 to you, that's intense, right? It doesn't matter if it's a 5-pound dumbbell or a 55 or a 550 pound back squat, like whatever it is. So if you're not training that intense, if you don't have healthy insulin levels, those would be cases for fats. What else?
If you're more sedentary,
Yep.
that'd be a good case for fats. Or if you're a carboholic.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're sedentary, if you're sitting on your butt, you're not moving a whole lot, then I always like to think of like carbohydrates. There are way more cases to make for carbohydrates, like I was talking about earlier with the thyroid and all that, but I like to think of carbohydrates as kind of like rocket fuel. So if you're doing intense training and you're in a healthy, your liver is healthy, everything is good, then you can utilize those carbs properly. If you're sedentary, you don't need a lot of rocket fuel, right? Your body can get kind of the energy it needs from those fats. And like Holly said, if you're a carbophobe, if you're afraid of carbohydrates, it's probably okay to have some, potentially. And if you're a carboholic, if you've been eating nothing but carbs and candies and cakes and pastas and breads and all that stuff, then it might do you some good to step back from those, again, temporarily, right? So unlike carbohydrates, which I said, can be kind of like full ranging or wide ranging rather, and your body has to have a protein intake and it has to have a fat intake, there is kind of like a minimum amount of fats that you would want to get. I would put that, like if I were to gun to my head, give you a range, I would say like at least 20 to 30% of your daily dietary intake coming from fats. So, and like if you're someone that's doing the keto diet, then you're going to be upwards of like 70 to 75% of your diet coming from fats. But I do think like if you drop your fats, to even to 20%, but certainly below 20% for long, you're going to start running into problems because your body needs those fats. Like every cell in your body has what is called the cell membrane, right? That's like the walls of your home. If your house is your cell, your walls are made out of like phospholipids, right? And lipid fat. So your body needs those fats, not just for cell membranes, for a bunch of stuff throughout your body, hormone levels, all of this. But So you want to make sure that you're getting some amount of them. Again, it's going to be kind of dependent on some of these things. I also want to make a small note on the types of fats because, again, a calorie is not a calorie. That's a very lazy way of saying things. When someone says a calorie is a calorie, that's a false statement. Unless you're just looking at it from like a purely how much energy does it take to burn a calorie like in a lab, then sure. But that's the human body is not a scientific lab. If you haven't figured that out, it's anyways. The types of fat are going to be important. So if you I'm trying to think of how deep I want to go and if I want to like talk more about Western medicine or not. I think Western medicine will bastardize saturated fats and tell you to not have saturated fats. Saturated fats are good. I think your body needs a certain amount of those. But what I would say is there's information on the internet about omega-6 fat, like omega-6 fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats. I would say if you're someone that especially is dealing with insulin, like poor insulin health, and you want to do a lower carb diet, and you're trying to figure out what should I have for fats, I would say Google monounsaturated fats and omega-3. Actually, we'll simplify this. Omega. For some reason, tell Google to shut up.
Stop.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. You got it.
Yeah.
My phone apparently thought I was talking to it. That's embarrassing. Because I said the G word. I said.
Oh.
Yeah. I said GOOGLE and then monounsaturated fats. But also omega and then odd numbers. So 3, 7, 9, like the omega with an odd number are anti-inflammatory. Omega and an even number are pro-inflammatory. So, and I always want to make sure that people know it doesn't mean you have to eliminate omega-6s, but you want, at least as many omega-3s as you do omega-6s. So omega-3s, fish oil. Monounsaturated fats, we're talking avocados, olives, olive oils, almonds, I'm trying to think of other ones. Macadamias are omega-9s, right? So just take a couple minutes, educate yourself, Google those terms, and that would be like you want to pay attention to that because again, inflammation is an important consideration in all of this. So so that's proteins, carbs, and fats.
So step number 4, you're going to start bridging the gap between current and should.
Right, and those are in quotations, right, between current, what you're doing, and should, what the the algorithms tell you. So this is kind of like number 1, what you're doing, you're just going to start tracking, and that's telling you what your current is. And then number 2, you're going to use one of those calorie calculators to figure out what you should be eating. Mm-hmm. So like she said, you want to start bridging that gap between what you're currently doing and what you quote unquote should be doing. Mm-hmm. So why is this important? Well, you could go on a crash diet where you're, let's say you're doing that early example I made where you're eating currently 3,500 calories and the calorie calculator you find says you should be eating 2,000 calories. And you're like, I'm just going to drop and I'm going to cut my food almost in half automatically. Hey, crash diets get great results really quick. But the problem is that those results will likely disappear because, number 1, those results are not going to last. And because the longer you go in a big calorie deficit, your body wants to survive. It's not worried about losing weight. It looks at weight as like emergency fuel. So that crash diet is almost kind of like reckless behavior when it comes to this. And this is where, again, like patience and consistency will pay off. And that actually leads to like a kind of a new favorite phrase of mine that actually comes, I think, courtesy of I want to say the Navy SEALs, but I know like one of the elite military groups that's your.
Oh man. Okay. I was like, what are you gonna say?
Yep.
So slow is smooth, and smooth is fast, and like from my journey that I've gone through, like I didn't start out balls to the wall working out 7 days a week and like eating 500 calories. I worked out twice a week with Andy, and then I slowly took some things out.
Yep.
Like I just stopped eating fast food every day and still allowed myself to have fast food 1 day a week. And then as I lost more and I saw the momentum and the excitement of the changes, then I wanted to take out the rest and keep going.
Yep. So, and just you giggled a little bit just in case that sentence didn't come out smoothly, ironically enough. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yes.
So, and I'll say that to her in the mornings if she's getting in a bit of a rush and she's trying to run out the door and get to work. It's like, hey, don't be in a rush, right? You might also say that like haste makes waste, right? Mm-hmm. You're in a rush and now you screw something up because you're trying to go too fast. And now it's like, well, now I got to take care of that too. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So the problem with that is that most people want fast and they don't think about, well, slow actually is fast. They want immediate and they do the crash diets and they drop things way too low and they, they choose options that are probably not the most effective because like she said, she started working out just 2 days a week. She stopped going fast food every single day. It was once a week, right? She wasn't worried about intermittent fasting and getting 6-7 workouts a week and cleaning up everything and all that. It was like, let's just take a couple steps in the right direction. And by doing that, 9 months later, she lost 92 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'm going to celebrate her a little bit later, but it's over 6 years now, 5-6 years that you've lost that weight.
Yeah.
And you've kept it off, which not a lot of people do. So I know I've made that mention of that in the podcast before. So when she says slow is smooth and smooth is fast, what does that mean in terms of weight loss or muscle gain? It's usually dramatically less. Like if I asked you as you're listening to this, what percentage of your body weight should you lose on a weekly basis? I think, if I'm to try to sit next to you in your car or at the gym with you as you're listening to this, and I'm thinking people are probably saying 5%, maybe somebody isn't the best with math and they're 10%. If you're 200 pounds, 10% means you're losing 20 pounds a week. That's crash diet.
Yeah.
What I would say, and the healthy, again, slow is smooth way to do this is you want to try to lose 0.5% to 1% of your body weight per week. So let's put this in context. Let's say, again, somebody is 200 pounds. Somebody is, we'll go back to the earlier example. Someone's 240 pounds. That means that you would expect to lose 1.2 to 2.4 pounds per week. Now, I know there are some, diet pills and detox teas and things like that promise 5 to 10 pounds of weight loss a week. Again, crash diets, it's going to come back on you. If you think of, hey, I'm going to lose, 2.4 pounds per week, extrapolate that out over a year, 52 weeks, that means you're going to be losing well over, 100, 120 pounds in that year. If you're losing half that means you're still losing 50 to 60 pounds in a year, and you've done it consistently. I think the hardest thing is people want to do it right now. And it's you aren't going to get it off right now. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Another thing's progress, not perfection. So, and I think if I can add another P to that, progress, not perfection, requires patience. And I think that's something that we're not also very adept at as human beings. So right. Progress, not perfection, requires patience.
But that doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook repeatedly.
Correct. So there are people that I have helped and worked with in the past, and they're oh God, I, had a 6-pack or drank a case and had a pizza and just, completely go to town. And I do it every single weekend because, I'm not trying to be perfect. And it's well, yeah, but there's this is all relative, right? There's a certain level of, well, could you maybe do a little bit better than that? I think more than anything, one of the most important concepts that might come through on this episode is consistency. And there's 2 types of consistency. What are those types of consistency?
Frequency and magnitude.
Frequency and magnitude. So you have frequency consistency and magnitude consistency. And this is not my concept. This is courtesy of Mike Israetel, who, bodybuilding coach, good fitness mind in his own right. But so frequency consistency and magnitude consistency. So those basically both are broken down into frequency consistency means on 7 days of the week, how consistent are you all the way across the board? You know, if you we're not gonna have any cookies, but I had a cookie on Wednesday and a cookie on Friday. All right, I mean that's, you know, you didn't hit 100%, but it was like it was a cookie twice throughout the entire week, whereas maybe beforehand you were doing 3 cookies a day every day, right? So frequency consistency is how often are you not following the plan, and then magnitude consistency is like how bad did you go off the plan. So in the cookie case, like the magnitude is like I had a cookie. It's like, all right, it's not that bad. But if you're like, I had a cookie and then I was like, screw it, I had a cookie, I might as well eat the whole damn box. That's magnitude consistency, right? So, and again, if you want to really kind of drill this home, it's like if you have a box of cookies every single day, you're blowing your magnitude consistency and frequency consistency out of the water. So, again, I had a sentence on here on the notes that said your level of consistency should match the level of your goal. But I put a line through consistency because I think more realistically, it should be your level of effort should match the level of your goal, right? So because everybody, like consistency is kind of like how consistent were you all the way across the board, frequency and magnitude, right? Effort is going to be a relative thing. For some people, just getting off the damn couch, like that is a struggle, and that's a hard thing, right? I was helping a buddy came by and, you know, back pain and stuff like that. I'm not expecting him to go start running marathons, right? So it's like, but I know he can put in effort, and I know he is, and he does put in effort, and I know he's listening to this, and I love you, man. But your effort is going to be relative to you. So your level of the effort that you put in should match the level of your goal. So if you have a big goal, like I want to lose 50 pounds, 100 pounds, well, then you're going to need some effort to that. That doesn't mean that it has to be like some Herculean effort every single day, but that means that you want to have effort to match that level of your goal. If you just want to lose 5 pounds, it's not going to take you a year to do that. It shouldn't take you a year to do that. If you're working with someone that it's taken you a year to lose that amount of weight, like, please contact us. Another thing kind of building on that too is like screw motivation, build momentum. I think that's infinitely more important because motivation, I've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast and on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram. Motivation is fleeting. Motivation comes and goes, right? I have people reach out and they're like, I need some accountability and some motivation. And it's like, all right, that's cool. Like, I kind of look at motivation and accountability like training wheels on a bike. If you need it to kind of get going, all right, cool. But like sooner or later, I'm going to take those training wheels off and you need to be able to ride that bike, you know, solo or at least maybe with like check-ins so you know what's going on. If you are constantly in need of accountability and motivation, then I think maybe you might not be at the point that you think you are in terms of being fed up and needing a change, right? So screw motivation, build momentum, and you build momentum by building that frequency and magnitude consistency and by keeping your effort levels appropriate to your goals. So
step 5, you're going to want to assess your progress.
Yep. So step 5, assess your progress. What would be, I'm going to put you on the spot. How would you assess your progress if you're trying to lose weight?
Well, if I've made these different changes, I'd see how they're affecting my body.
Right. How would you see that?
If you've lost weight, if you feel more energized,
I'm trying to get you to say
clothes.
Okay, good. There you go. So energized, fit in your clothes. What's another common way that I do daily and I pull teeth on you to get?
Weighing.
There you go. Weighing on your scale, right? So like assessing your progress, and it doesn't have to be the scale, right? I don't, if somebody can weigh every day and it doesn't mess with them psychologically, then awesome. Like weigh every single day. But other people are like, I would really rather not weigh every single day, i.e. my wife, which that's totally good, right? I give her grief and bust her chops about it, but like I'm totally good with that. As long as it's a consistent once a week or every other week and we know things are moving in the right direction, I'm all good with that. But you need to find ways to assess whether things are moving in the right direction, whether it's like progress pictures are awesome because you could take pictures 1 month and then maybe 5 months later, you don't feel like anything is happening, but you take another set of pictures and you compare the two, and you're like, holy shit! Like I've really lost some weight around my midsection. I didn't notice that, and I can see my shoulders and my arms definition now. I couldn't see that before. So just ways you could assess your progress, measuring, like tape measures rather, stepping on scale, taking pictures. How do certain clothes fit, right? That's another big thing. I think I have on the website, nutrient-health.com, but I think I have on the website and the testimonials page, I think, or no, either way, it's on the homepage, a quote by one of the best transformation like testimonials I got from a lady was her talking about, I think it was a skirt that she bought, and she wasn't fitting into it, and like she texted me one day and she was like, hey, you know that skirt that I bought that I've been like talking about? Yeah. She's like, I'm fitting into it. So if it's something like that, a pair of pants, that shirt that you really like but it's kind of tight, a little more uncomfortable than you want to be, that's another thing you could do, and kind of look at that on a monthly basis. You can put on that pair of pants the first day of every month and see how are they fitting better and better and better. As far as assessing the progress, though, like the best case, it's going to be smooth sailing. And what I mean by that is like, hey, every time I check my progress, things are going in the right direction and it's smooth sailing and there's no problems. The cases for that, I've talked before in the past. I recently helped a client in Louisiana help them lose, I think, 30 pounds in 3 months. And that was a really easy transformation, at least on my part, because he had never really dieted before. He hadn't really worked out consistently before. And I think he was, kind of more sedentary at work. So if you have never dieted before, if you have a history of poor food choices, if you're sedentary, these are all things that as you start to eat a little bit better, basically I could summarize this by saying, the more things you're doing like quote unquote incorrectly now, and you start to make steps in the right direction, start eating a little bit better, start moving a little bit more, start carrying and putting a little bit more effort forward, it's going to be smooth sailing, and your body's going to be like, hey, we're actually doing something in the right direction for us now. So that's the best case, is it's going to be smooth sailing.
More common, though, is you're going to have to go into problem-solving mode and figuring out why you've plateaued or what's going on inside your body, why you aren't making progress anymore.
Yep. Which is why I kind of keep making these like little tangents, because I'm trying to point things out so people can kind of keep some of these things in mind and be like, well, he did say this and he did point that out as far as carbohydrates and fats, because like she said, more commonly, it's problem-solving mode. And that's why at the very beginning I said I kind of look at us as like nutritional detectives, nutritional philosophers, right? Because it's not just science. It's not just the numbers. There's a little bit more to it. So like you're going to have to go into problem-solving mode if what was working isn't working anymore, or if what quote-unquote should be working never started working, right? Those are things to look at. In both of those situations, how could you possibly tell, like, well, it was working, but it's not anymore. Why? Or it's supposed to be working, but it's not. Why? I would say this is where you need to start looking at other health issues, like potentially doing some like blood work, some labs, and seeing, do you have any signs of insulin resistance? Do you have any signs of metabolic syndrome? Do you have any signs of like poor thyroid health? Are your sex hormones in optimal ranges, or are they low or dramatically high for some reason? What's your lipid panel, like your triglycerides, your HDL, your LDL? Where are those at? So those are things to look at, and that's obviously a service that we provide. But understanding where your health markers are at, oftentimes, like, it does happen where someone's like, the results just aren't coming and their labs look great. Then it's like, all right, well, we need to dig a little bit deeper and figure out what's going on. But more often than not, if someone comes to us and they're not losing, and I say, can I get some blood work? And I look at what's going on, we can point out what the problems are. And when those, insulin levels or sex hormones or thyroid, when those levels become healthier over time, suddenly everything starts moving in the right direction again. So,
right. And working with a professional may be worth it for at least like 3 to 6 months. I know when I started my journey, the most I'd ever done was like gotten on a treadmill. I didn't know how to lift weights or feel comfortable lifting weights. I didn't know what macros were.
Yep.
you get blood work done at the doctor, but they don't even go fully in depth on what you actually need done. So I started working with Andy, and that kickstarted the whole process.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Like I've been trying to get more and more reps in with helping people understand their blood work. So I've noticed, and this isn't, I used to be pissed off with the medical establishment, but I understand that they're kind of subject, unfortunately, to the whims and fancies of the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. So the doctors only have like 10 to 12 minutes with you because they have to, they're kind of in a position where they have to like churn and burn, basically, get them in, get them out in order to make their money and their, I don't know, quotas, but so they don't have a whole lot of time with you. So that's one of the things that we definitely do with our clients is to make sure like we sit down and, as I will explain these things. I've had four people in the last month tell me that I explain things so much better than their doctor ever did. And I know the doctors, they care. They don't have the time. I fortunately have the time to sit down with you for an hour, 2 hours if it takes, and answer the questions and explain these things because, again, education is power. So, right. That wraps up number 5.
And just the last part, we're going to talk a little bit about eating less and moving more.
Yep. So I mentioned that kind of towards the beginning of the podcast. That a very common trope on the internet is like eat less, move more, you'll lose weight. If you're not losing weight, you're either not moving enough or you're eating too much. And it's not that simple, right? It's clearly not that simple. If it were, everybody would lose weight. They would just say, I'm going to eat less and move more until I lose all my weight and I'm good to go. Well, again, we survived as a species because our bodies adapt to everything we do, right? Metabolic adaptation. We talk about this a lot. So eating less and moving more will work in the short term, but it will eventually lead to a plateau. This is kind of like the crash diet, right? So if you're like, screw it, I'm not doing anything at all right now, and I'm eating horribly, and I'm going to start a hardcore vegan diet, and I'm going to start lifting CrossFit style workouts 7 days a week. You'll lose some weight initially, but you're going to be exhausted. Things are going to start slowing down. Thyroid's probably going to go out of whack, yada, yada, yada. More likely, instead of eating less and moving more likely you'll need to like at least eventually work to achieve a balance. So for example, what I mean by that is like instead of eat less, move more, why don't we eat less, move enough, right? How about instead of eat less, move more, why don't we eat more and move more? So that way you're fueling the body for the workouts that you want to have, right? I think that would be really apt for someone who's trying to lose like the last 5 to 10 pounds. Maybe you're in a situation likely where you need to eat more and also move more. Or you could, again, eat less and move less, right? That's not a get out of jail ticket to just be like, oh, I'm just going to sit on the couch and not eat anything. Like that's probably not best either, but just we get that like eat less, move more thing. It's not going to end well. So.
And so you can see like all of these are context specific, what each person, what their goals are, what they're going through life.
Yep.
It's all context specific.
Yep. What have you been doing will help determine where you need to go and what you need to do. So again, context specific, right? Eat more, move more would probably be a good option for most people that are trying to lose that last 5 to 10 pounds. Eat less, move less would be good for someone who has been doing the eat less, move more. Well, maybe your body stopped responding to that because it's in too big of a calorie deficit. So let's scale back the movement. Or let's make the movement a little bit easier. So instead of it being, 7 CrossFit workouts a day, what if we lifted 2 times a week? Did I say a day?
Yeah.
7, yeah, Jesus, Lord Almighty. Instead of 7 CrossFit workouts a week, then you could maybe do 2 workouts, like lifting sessions a week, and like walk 3 days a week and take 2 days off. I'll never forget, I had a trip to Pittsburgh. This is years ago, and I was there for like a week, and I wasn't able to work out. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get so fat. I mean, this is, 12 years ago. And I was so stressed out for like the first 2 days. And lo and behold, what happened? Well, on like day 3, I noticed that like my abs were coming in, and like I hadn't had abs. Like I was skinny, but like I didn't have any abs popping out. So taking a break from the workouts, my body actually responded well, and I was like, huh, what's that about? So very context specific. And again, like I just said, kind of adjusting your workout intensity if you're already working out. If you're not working out at all, like start moving, just walking around. Like so, the eat less, move more can be adjusted in a number of different ways. So
You can probably see now, like, few people successfully achieve and maintain. It's not always simple as just eat this much until you lose as much weight as you want.
right. So I think people will. Some people achieve the goal, but like she said, they don't maintain the goal. They don't keep the goal, right? Okay, you reached that peak of the mountain, but how quickly did you fall off the mountain, right? And that, like I see this in the fitness industry. Again, it's everybody's goals and where they want to be in life. It's all an individual thing. It's very individualistic, right? Some people are like, hey, I wanted to get a physique with a 6-pack, and I did it, and I achieved it, and I got a photo shoot, and I'm happy with that. And now I just kind of want to relax. I don't want to go that hardcore all the time because, again, the level of your effort should match the level of your goals. I definitely push myself hard. I want to look and feel and think like a superhero. So I know that there are going to be like sacrifices and tough things and adjustments that I need to make for that. But I do think that I see people in the fitness space who maybe their profile picture is like, man, they look great, and then you see them now, and it's like, what the hell happened? Mm-hmm. So I do think though, like the ways to that kind of level of success is like education, which is hopefully what we're providing you, effort, which is what you would provide to it, and experience is what you get as you go through this, right? So with education, effort, and experience, you can reach your goals, and more importantly, you can maintain them and keep them if that's your goal.
So you can climb the mountain and stay on top.
Yep, you can climb the mountain and stay on top. So I do want to take that second just to celebrate my amazing wife because she has done that. She achieved the weight loss. She's kept it off. So, whoop, whoop for Holly. And, it's possible, right? But has it been a breeze, a walk in the park
No.
for the last 5 years? Are there times where you get overwhelmed and stressed out and frustrated?
Yes.
And are there times where you're like, Frisch, I need to know what to do. Just tell me, what am I eating today?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, woman, I don't know. I don't want to talk about food anymore.
He's like, I'm not a coach today.
Right? Yeah, like I'm taking my coach hat off. So it is possible. I'm not saying it's easy though, right? So hopefully this podcast though has provided some direction and answered some questions and kind of gives you some food for thought. So, go back through it if you need to and understand. Like really simply, it's track your progress. Track what you're doing right now. Find out what you should be eating. Find out the macro ratios. Compare what you are doing to what you should be doing, and start kind of like bridging that gap and getting to what the science says you should be doing. And then once you're there, how consistent are you with it? And if things still aren't working out, then look at lab work, blood work, look at hiring a professional for like 3 to 6 months to kind of get a feel for things and understand like maybe there's something in the landscape of my journey that I'm not seeing. So, and I think that's, like obviously it worked out for both of us with her reaching out to me because we got married and we're doing nutrient health and fitness. But that's where it's at. So I'll wrap it there. I don't want to keep talking, but everybody, again, you guys can do this. So hopefully this answers some of the questions as far as like, well, what should I eat? Like now maybe you understand after however long we've been talking when someone says like, how much should I eat to lose weight? Like, what should I set my calories at? I'm like, there's so much more we need to talk about, yeah. Right? So hopefully I can send people to this episode and they can kind of get a grasp. And if you've messaged me or Holly and I said, hey, go listen to episode number 26, and you've listened to this and you're done and you're like, okay, cool, but I still have questions, fire back, right? Like, let me know. Let me know you listen to it. Let me know you understand this and this and this, but I still have these questions. Okay, cool. At least we've had this conversation now instead of me having to have this conversation hundreds of times again for the rest of my life. So, as always, guys, thank you so freaking much for listening to the podcast. We appreciate your time and attention. I know everybody's super busy, so I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to us.
Yeah, and guys, if you found anything useful, please, tell people about our podcast. Let them know. Let them know we're on YouTube.
Yep.
And then feel free to subscribe. We'd love to have y'all go along this journey with us.
Yep. If anything we said helped you or helped anybody else that you know on this journey, let them know, let us know. Like she said, subscribe to us. You can also leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on, I think, Facebook, Instagram. Both of those are Nutrient_official. On YouTube, it's Andy Frisch. I think I created a TikTok account, but I was like, yeah, this is horrible. So I deleted. I promptly deleted TikTok off my phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, find us on social media. And lastly, guys, again, if you have any questions, feel free to email those questions to us. We will answer them on a future episode. Email us at NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. All one word, NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. That is episode number 26 of the Nutrient Health Project podcast in the books. Holly, Danielle, how's it feel to be back?
Feels good. A little rusty, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting it back.
We'll work it out.
Getting the train on the tracks.
We'll work it out.
Nah.
So, have you eaten yet today?
I had oatmeal.
She had oatmeal, so so she did pretty good for not having having a little bit, but yeah. All right, let's wrap this and go for a walk. So everybody, thank you guys for listening. Hope you have a fantastic day. Let me know if you have any questions on any of this. We love you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your patronage. Is that the word? I don't know. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.